This is Kathleen Turner.
This is Matthew Reese.
This is Rosalind Ayres.
I'm Brian Cox.
I'm Rhonda Reed.
This is LA Theatre Works. I'm Susan Lowenberg.
She didn't suffer fools gladly. She was very intelligent, and she desperately wanted to get on with this work.
That's the voice of Raymond Gosling, the closest working partner of scientist Rosalind Franklin during her work on the study of DNA. Over the period of 2 years, Gosling and Franklin worked tirelessly in a basement lab at King's College London, from which they produced the iconic photograph of the double helix. That legendary image gave its title to Anna Ziegler's biographical study of Rosalind Franklin, Photograph 51, this week on LA Theatre Works. In Hour 1 of Photograph 51, a brilliant young biophysicist,
I'm Dr. Rosalind Franklin,
has joined one of the most prestigious labs in all of England.
You will be assisting me in my study of the Ziegler DNA from Switzerland.
Dr. Wilkins. I will not be anyone's assistant.
And while her colleagues hunger for public recognition,
I want to get in the race, Wilkins.
What race are you referring to, Watson?
For the structure of DNA, of course.
Rosalind methodically works to discover the key to life.
It's a helix.
I know.
Gosling.
It's incredible.
I've never seen anything like it. Photograph 51.
And now, Hour 2 of Photograph 51 by Anna Ziegler, starring Miriam Margolyes as Rosalind Franklin. Produced by LA Theatre Works.
On the train back to Cambridge, he sketched the image in the margin of a newspaper. He stared at it. He stared at it some more. When the train pulled in, he ran like a wild man down the rainy streets. And then he arrived.
What is it?
The Nobel.
What?
The answer.
What's the answer?
It's a double helix. I saw it.
Where?
At King's, and we have to build a model right now. We have to start right now. We've got it, Francis. It's ours. They are sitting on it, and they don't know it. It's ours. This is how we're going to get to replication.
Well, I don't quite understand.
There's no time to understand. We just have to start.
Well, let me at least finish this cup of tea. It's really quite lovely. Jasmine mixed with a...
Francis!
All right.
But that's not how it happened. I didn't just give him the photograph. He asked for it.
No, I don't think so. You offered it up like a leg of lamb we'd share for dinner.
I didn't.
And that same week,
Don Casper arrived.
shortly after getting his doctorate, Dr. Casper was awarded a fellowship with us at King's. Apparently, one of the scientists here had gone to bat for him, so to speak. I can't imagine who it was.
And this is Miss Franklin.
You're Dr. Franklin?
That's me.
Well, hello. It's funny, I imagined you differently.
How did you imagine me?
He couldn't say that he'd imagined her dowdier, a woman whose exterior mirrored her seriousness.
Oh, just fairer, maybe? Blonde.
You thought I was blonde?
I don't know. Yes.
You knew I was Jewish, though.
Yes, so am I.
That will make two of us at King's.
I have left New Haven, haven't I?
Yes, I suppose you have. And how was your journey?
His journey was fine. So shall we?
It was fine. A little tiring.
Yes, it must have been.
It's strange to meet someone with whom one has...
We should get to work then, shouldn't we?
Yes. I think work is the reason why we're all here, isn't it? Isn't it, Miss Franklin?
It certainly is, Dr. Wilkins.
4 days later, Crick invited Wilkins for Sunday lunch in Cambridge. He found, when he arrived, that...
I hope you don't mind that I invited Watson, too.
Hello, Morris.
No, of course not.
Here, sit down. What can I get you to drink? Odile is making a roast, but it won't be ready for an hour or so.
Anything's fine. Whiskey?
Whiskey it is.
So, how's it been lately with you-know-who?
Don't ask.
She's working hard.
Same as always.
People never change, do they?
No. And I wonder sometimes if perhaps I shouldn't move. You know, to the countryside. I can't really. That is to say, I haven't met anyone in London. Have you met anyone out here? I mean, women. Do you meet women?
One whiskey.
Very good. Thank you.
I have met a few women here, sure.
Met being the operative word. They take one look at him and then How would one describe it? I guess then there's a brief period of whispering, after which time they end up leaving the pub because one turns out to have left her hat at home, or some such nonsense. No, it's more likely James would solve the secret of life than bed a woman.
Now, why'd you say that? It's just none of the women here happen to appreciate my sophisticated charms.
Francis, do you remember Margaret Ramsay?
You'd think I could forget Margaret Ramsay.
Margaret was
one of the very few women in science at Cambridge, and he was absolutely smitten by her. And then one night they were sitting at opposite ends of his room, talking about the typical things one talked about, I suppose, and out of nowhere he tells her he's in love with her. The poor sod doesn't take her out, get a few drinks in her, and kiss her. No, he tells her he's fallen for her and then continues to sit there, waiting for some verbal reciprocation of his love.
And what happened?
After a very long silence, she stood, said goodbye, and left.
See, women expect men to fall upon them like unrestrained beasts. Despite their murmurings to the contrary, they want to feel that you can't keep your hands off them. Morris has never understood that.
I guess what I'm wondering is, how do you and Odile, how does it work so well?
Well, it works because she doesn't know that he ogles every other woman who crosses his path.
I don't. I mean, give me some credit. Sometimes I do much more than ogle.
But you love her.
What is this, Prime Minister's question time?
Of course I love her. I mean, honestly, I don't know what I'd do without her. You think it'd be satisfying to spend all of one's time with Jim here? I assure you it wouldn't. He doesn't exactly fulfill my every need.
I certainly hope not.
What is it, Wilkins? Is something wrong?
Oh, I don't know. It's just that I'm starting to think there might come a point in life after which one can't really begin again.
That's right. It's called birth. After that point, what's done is done, which leads us nicely to a discussion of genes.
Ah, yes. Let's discuss how the work is going, shall we?
Yes, the work. The work. That is the important thing, isn't it?
Do tell us what our little ray of sunshine is keeping busy with these days.
Anything new on her docket? If you don't mind sharing, that is.
I honestly couldn't give two damns. I'm happy to tell you all I can remember.
Well, good. That's great.
So let's see. She's writing a paper at the minute. She might never finish it. The woman writes so slowly to begin with, and lately she's been a bit distracted. Infuriating, really.
What's it on, then?
Her recent photographs, I'm sure. As you saw, they were the best yet.
Yes, they were good. Very good.
And is she building a model?
Starting to.
Is she? I didn't know that. James, did you know that?
I didn't know that, Francis.
She has so much information now, she can no longer avoid it.
What kind of model is it?
It's of B. A is no longer viable on its own, of course. So essentially A and B have become hers. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but it happened. And yes, a model may come out of it someday.
Well, good.
Yes, good.
Yeah, that's terrific for her. We wish her well.
Yes.
You do?
Of course.
But how would you feel, Morris, if...
What?
I mean, what I mean to say is...
He wonders if you'd be opposed to our trying, one more time, to get at the thing.
You want to build another model?
Would that be all right with you?
We wanted to ask you first, since it really is your thing.
They neglected to mention that they'd already begun.
You really should get to it yourself, old boy. You can do one too.
Oh, well...
It's a super idea. You do one too.
I can't do one, not with Rosie around. It's her territory, her materials.
So that's grand. You'll do it if Rosie ever leaves.
Yes, grand. She's bound to go sometime, after all.
And we'll get started on ours, so long as you give us the go-ahead.
I can't tell you what to do. I just...
Yes?
I didn't know you were interested, is all. In doing it yourselves, not again. Not after what happened last time around. I mean, weren't you sufficiently embarrassed?
Morris, if I hid out after every embarrassment, I'd probably never be able to leave my room.
And his room is an embarrassment. Utterly filthy. Why do you think he's here all the time?
Odile's roasts aren't bad.
You take that back. They're superb.
Almost as tender as her thighs.
Okay, that's enough.
Look, if I'd known you were going to do another, I wouldn't have...
What, Morris?
Said so much, I suppose. Or shown you.
And then things moved quickly. quickly especially by the standards of a PhD student for whom everything moves slowly.
Watson and Crick got hold of the paper Rosalind had written. It was confidential.
It wasn't confidential. Another scientist at Cambridge gave it to us after it was circulated to a committee over which he was presiding.
Well, it wasn't published, that's for sure. And it included her latest calculations. Confirmation that the B form was helical, and the diameter of that helix. Information that became critical to your work.
I'm sure we would have gotten there sooner or later, even without it.
So would we have done with the benefit of your work. You had ours, but we didn't have yours.
There was no we where you were concerned. That was the problem.
Anyway, it doesn't matter how they got the paper, only that they got it.
And that Rosalind didn't know she should be in a hurry. Neither of us knew.
Would you excuse me, Dr. Casper? Oh, I'm so sorry. My hand slipped.
It's fine.
I was just...
It's fine, Rosalind.
What's happened? You got your degree and somehow I lost mine?
I'm sorry, Dr. Franklin. It's just...
What?
I like your name. Rosalind. Rosie.
Why?
It's warm. It makes me think about coming inside to a fire after a walk in the bitter cold.
Only an American could come up with such a line.
But I'm not warm. No one thinks I'm warm. Ask anyone.
Listen.
Yes?
Would you have dinner with me?
Dinner?
No, not like... just dinner. Something really casual.
I don't think you understand that nothing in England is casual. No, everything here is filled with meaning no one will name or indulge. It's why I much preferred Paris.
But I would think it must have been very hard to be in Paris.
Why's that?
I don't know. After the war, it must not have been too friendly to...
Oh, yes, but you just have to get by, don't you? That's all one can do. You can't constantly be thinking about that, or I imagine it would destroy you.
It would. I'm certain it would. Have dinner with me.
I'm afraid there just isn't time, Dr. Casper.
For dinner?
Yes.
In the meantime, Watson and Crick were working at breakneck speed.
After looking at Rosalind's report, they made a conclusion she had yet to draw. That DNA consisted of two chains running in opposite directions, like escalators in a tube station.
Which is how it replicates, Watson. That's how it works.
Each strand is a template, and in each template is another helix, and on forever.
Do you know what this means?
Yes! I mean, no.
It means large homes in the countryside without leaky radiators. It means suits tailored to fit. It means my mother will stop politely asking why I didn't go into law or medicine, and whether I have any regrets about the way my life has turned out.
It means textbook publishers will call to make sure they have the correct spelling of our names.
Yes, and you can choose any woman as your wife, and my wife will look at me differently.
It means there will always be the means to keep doing this forever.
We're almost there, Watson. We're so close.
Mid-February, Watson and Crick were all of a sudden being very friendly. They invited everyone to Cambridge. Well, everyone except me. And then acted strangely cheerful.
Rosalind, so good to see you. Come in, come in. Here, let me take your coat.
You are looking particularly lovely today, particularly vibrant.
Hello, Jim. Francis? Morris?
And you must be Dr. Casper.
Please, call me Don.
Now, what was so important that we come all the way here?
Just the pleasure of your company, Miss Franklin, on a lovely winter's day. Nothing more.
Why not wait out the winter doldrums together? By a warm fire, maybe, sipping the finest Cambridge has to offer.
You'd be silly to waste a day like this indoors. And I certainly won't, not after being cooped up on the train all morning. Will you come with me to the garden, Don?
Of course, Rosalind.
She's different.
Not to me, still the same old...
Come now, let's be kind.
I've always been kind to her. I've been nothing but kind.
Oh.
What was that?
Oh.
What?
Don't you see?
See what?
Sometimes you can be so blind, Jim.
I can be blind? That's a funny notion.
He's in love with her.
In love with who? No!
Undeniably.
That is quite a theory, Francis, but do you have any proof?
That's not the way we work now, is it?
Francis, Don, just had the most fascinating idea.
Yes? About what exactly? About helices, or...?
He was proposing that isomorphous replacement could be used with the tobacco mosaic virus.
It's not so novel.
No, it's a first-class idea.
So, you'd put atoms of...
Lead, or maybe mercury, something heavy.
Into the virus protein to see what the difference would be between the X-ray patterns. The X-ray with the atoms and the one without. That would determine the structure. It's very clever.
Soon enough we'll be making a model. Right, Rosie?
She doesn't like being called Rosie.
I don't mind it.
And she doesn't like making models.
But are you thinking of making one?
And how much longer will you be in London, Caspar?
Not very much longer, I'm afraid. This fellowship is just a couple more months.
Shame.
It is.
Yes. Shame.
Quite a shame. Yes.
Wilkins, you old rogue.
What?
Francis, I do believe you're right.
Right about what?
Let's move into the sitting room, shall we? Jim, you go and help Odile bring out our new tea set, and then we'll sit and have a nice cup of tea.
Why should I help her? She's your wife.
Just go.
But don't be fooled. She was not distracted by me. Rosalind? No. She continued to work slowly and methodically, and in increasing isolation.
Can I get you anything at least? A cup of tea?
Can't you see I'm working, Gosling?
I know, I just thought... Oh, never mind.
Watson and Crick struggled with how the four bases fit into the picture. Did they pair up, work together, or were they distinct from each other?
You can't be tired. Are you really tired?
No, I'm wide awake. I'm just feigning fatigue to keep you on your toes.
Are you kidding? I can't tell if you're kidding.
I can't tell either.
February 23rd.
Gosling? Can you come here, Gosling?
What is it?
Oh, what you doing over there, playing solitaire?
No, I was just...
What do you think this is, nursery school? I mean, we have work to do.
But you haven't been wanting my help.
Please, just stand here, will you? No, that's too close. Still a little further. I need you to be standing further away so I can think. Yes. Both the A and B form are helical. They have to be.
2 steps away from the solution. 2 steps away. She just didn't know it.
It's late. Why don't you go home?
I'm fine.
Fine. You're staring at the photograph. I can tell you're doing nothing more than staring. Go home.
No.
Or let me look at it. Is it the bases? Are you thinking about the bases?
I think I'm thinking about how I've come to the end of thinking. How there's nothing left.
You're exhausted.
Not exhausted. Blank.
This rarely happens to you.
It never happens.
Never. You think if you were to give an inch, we'd all take a mile, is that it?
It's true, isn't it?
No, I don't think so.
Then you too have come to the end of thought. You should go home, Morris.
I could...
What?
We could talk it through. It might help.
For a moment, everything stopped. Different ways our lives could go hovered in the air around us.
You know, I think I am going to call it a night. I haven't been home before midnight for a fortnight. And really, what's the point of being here and not getting anywhere?
And then there was only one way everything would go.
Good night, Morris.
Good night.
February 28th, 1953. A barmaid made her way through the Cambridge snow to open the Eagle pub for the day. Watson and Crick were holed up like birds in a cage that was about to become the world.
They must pair off. The hydrogen bonds form between the pairs.
Adenine always goes with thymine. Cytosine with...
Whenever there's one on the DNA chain, there's always the other.
Yes.
Like a team. A successful team.
And in the meantime, Rosalind wondered if she was on a date. She couldn't be sure. She'd never been on one before.
I'm glad you didn't change your mind. You know, I've really thought you were going to change your mind. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time.
My time?
Right.
To be honest, I'm not sure anymore how terribly valuable my time is, Dr. Casper. Or maybe I haven't been allotting it to the right things. I don't know.
You don't know?
Well,
You're serious.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything.
Haven't you heard the story about the woman physicist who had to sneak into Princeton's lab in the middle of the night to use the cyclotron? And you probably know women aren't even permitted into Harvard's physics building.
Yes, I know that.
And yet here you are doing this amazing, groundbreaking work. And still, you aren't sure you're allotting your time correctly? I can't think of a better allotment of anyone's time.
I don't know.
Well, I do.
Should we get some tea then?
Rosalind, I have a confession. You might not like it.
What?
I hate tea. I hate it. I mean, I really hate it. I can't even pretend to like it.
Oh. Well, that is pretty bad. I think I'm rethinking everything I ever thought about you.
What did you think about me?
I thought you seemed balanced.
If by balance you mean always about to take a horrible misstep and have it all come crashing down around me, then maybe.
No. See, I've never had a balance.
No?
No.
But you've been happy.
Of course. Of course. Otherwise, why would I have
Why would you have what?
continued on, I guess, in this way?
Right. You wouldn't have.
Right.
You know, I have this theory. I think the things we want but can't have are probably the things that define us. And I've spent more time than I'd like to admit coming to this pretty simple conclusion, so I hope you don't think it's completely ridiculous, but I guess I'm talking about, I don't know, yearning?
Yearning?
I mean, what do you want, Rosalind?
So many things. To wake up without feeling the weight of the day pressing down. To fall asleep more easily, without wondering what it is that's keeping me awake. To eat more beetroot and also turnips. To be kissed. To feel important. To learn how to be okay being with other people. And also how to be alone. To be a child again, held up and admired, the world full of endless future. To be kissed. To feel every day what it would be to stand at the summit of a mountain in Wales or Switzerland or America, looking out over the world on a late afternoon with this man sitting across from me. Or to feel it once.
But instead she said,
I don't know.
It's two strands. The bases go in the middle, and the phosphates on the outside. It has to be. And we match the larger base with the smaller one. Crick!
Wait, don't say anything. Check it against the photograph.
Do you mind if I... That is to say, can I hold your hand?
I suppose that might be all right.
there's no science that can explain it. Loneliness.
Rosalind?
They match, Francis. It works! I can't believe it!
It's life unfolding right in front of us.
Rosalind!
It's the loneliest pursuit in the world, science. Because there either are answers, or there aren't. There either is a landscape that stretches before you, or there isn't. And when there isn't, when you're left in the darkness of an empty city at night, you have only yourself.
I'll get you help. I'll bring you somewhere.
A doctor.
Yes.
Thank you, Don.
Please don't thank me.
Don't worry, I won't do it again. It wasn't easy for me.
When they said they had something to show me, I had a feeling. All the way there on the train, the world seemed to move very quickly, as though passing me by.
And when he arrived in Cambridge, there it was. The model.
Well, say something, Wilkins.
I have 2 tumours. Twin tumours. Twins scampering around my body on tricycles, dropping handfuls of dirt as they go. For a moment I think of naming one Watson and the other Crick. But no, I tell myself. Rosalind, dispel the thought. No. I have ovarian cancer. A tumour in each ovary, one the size of a tennis ball and the other a croquet ball. And they are indeed an efficient pair.
You're really just going to stand there, gaping, after all this? Let's have something at least. Come on, give us something.
I think you're a couple of old rogues. But you may well have something. I think it's a very exciting notion. And who the hell got it isn't what matters.
An exciting notion? It is the secret of life, Wilkins.
But is it? Is it really, Jim?
Rosalind, listen to me.
Why? I'm not sure there is much else one could choose to see on those X-rays.
I'm going to find another hospital.
Just go home, Don. I'm fine here.
How could you possibly think I'd leave you here all alone?
But why would you stay?
Dear Miss Franklin. No. Rosalind. No. Dear Dr. Franklin. I was so sorry to hear about your illness. I'm sure you'll come out on the other side of it, however, and be back at King's in no time. Really, you haven't missed much. Things have been exceptionally dull around here. The equipment is getting dusty from disuse. It's been raining non-stop, of course. Watson and Crick discovered the secret of life. My teeth hurt in the mornings, just after I wake up. Dr. Randall sends his regards. We all miss you. No. We trust you'll soon be well. Yours, Maurice Wilkins.
Can you believe it, Crick? I mean, the cover story in Nature. Can you really believe it?
I can't.
Why do you seem so tired? I can't sit still. I'm energized. I want to take on everything now. The world, everything. Women, you know.
And you will.
Crick?
You will. I'm just tired, I think.
But wasn't it worth it? I mean, now we will never be forgotten.
Never.
That's right.
Never forgotten.
Francis.
My wife has taken the guest room as her own. She moved her things into it slowly, gradually, over the last few months. She was clever. It was only when nothing was left that I'd realized she was gone.
Maurice? What are you doing here? Why on earth are you sitting in my office in the dark?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were still...
I escaped.
You...
I don't intend to spend any more time in that hospital. If I'm going to be in a dank, disgusting little room, I may as well be here, where I might even get some work done before I die.
Please don't say that.
Why not? It's not pleasant. It makes you think about your own life. The inevitability of your own death.
Yes. All of those things.
Well, no one can protect you from those.
No. No, I suppose not.
We lose. In the end, we lose. The work is never finished, and in the meantime, our bodies wind down, tick slower, sputter out.
Like grandfather clocks.
Well, this has been a pleasant conversation.
Rosalind,
So they really got it, did they?
Yes.
Is the model Is it just beautiful?
Yes.
Well, we were close, weren't we? By God, we were close.
But we lost.
Lost? No, we all won. The world won, didn't it?
But aren't you at all?
Yes, but it's not that they got it first. It really isn't. It's that I didn't see it. I wish I'd been able to see it.
I think you would have. A few more days, even.
So why didn't I get those days? Who decided I shouldn't get those days? Didn't I deserve them? I mean, if I'd only...
Been more careful around the beam.
Collaborated. Been more open, less wary, less self-protective.
Or more wary, more self-protective.
Been a better scientist.
Been willing to take more risks, make models, go forward without the certainty of proof.
Been friendlier.
Or born at another time.
Or born a man.
But you'll see, the work never ends. Next month, I'm going to go to a conference in Leeds with one of my colleagues from Paris. We're going to drive there, stop off at some Norman churches along the way.
Churches?
I do love the shapes of things, you know. I love them even before they mean something.
But she never went to Leeds. Rosalind was 37 when she died. It was a particularly cold April that year. There was frost on the trees in London. The Alps stayed snow-covered well into June.
No, no, no! I won't have it!
Eulogies about her focused on her single-minded devotion to work, the progress she made in her work, the lasting contributions she made through her work.
Gosling, stop that. I said stop that right now.
I can't. It's what happened.
No. We start over. Come on, everyone. We start over.
You've got to be kidding me. Before we get to what happened next, my God, Wilkins, you won. We won. Your name on the Nobel Prize. Remember that part? This was the finest moment in your life.
No, it wasn't. Rosalind, we start over. Just us this time. Please. You see, I need...
What is it you need, Morris?
There's something I need to tell you. It's important.
Then tell me.
I saw you. The day you went to see The Winter's Tale at the Phoenix.
This is what you needed to tell me?
And I wanted to join you. I got in the queue to buy a ticket.
All right, so what happened?
It's not what happened. It's what could happen. Now.
What are you talking about, Morris?
January 1951. This time I attend the play. And I see you across the theatre. This time we make eye contact. And afterwards, we meet in the back, by the bar. This time, I say, did you enjoy the performance? Gielgud is excellent, don't you think?
Yes, very lifelike, very good.
And the incredible thing is, we're both there, watching him, experiencing the very same thing, together.
It is incredible.
Both watching.
And when Hermione died, even though it was Leontes' fault, I felt for him. I truly did.
Come, poor babe. I have heard, but not believed. The spirits of the dead may walk again. And they do. I love that Hermione wasn't really dead. That she comes back.
No, Morris, she doesn't. Not really.
Of course she does.
No.
Then how do you explain the statue coming to life?
Hope. They all project it. Leontes projects life where there is none, so he can be forgiven.
But don't you think he deserves to be forgiven?
Do I forgive myself?
What? For what?
You know, I think there must come a point in life when you realise you can't begin again, that you've made the decisions you've made, and then you live with them, or you spend your whole life in regret.
And I have spent my whole life in regret.
Well then, perhaps we should have seen the play together. Or gone to lunch.
Would that have changed things?
We'll never know, will we?
This is LA Theatre Works' production of Photograph 51 by Anna Ziegler. If you've missed anything so far, or you'd like to listen to this show online, visit us at latw.org or check this station's website for more information. Coming up next, a conversation with Rosalind Franklin's principal biographer, Brenda Maddox.
Support for this program is provided by the National Endowment for the Arts, a public agency dedicated to supporting excellence in the arts, because a great nation deserves great art. More information is available at NEA.gov.
This play is part of LA Theatre Works' Relativity series, featuring science-themed plays. Major funding for the Relativity series is provided by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to enhance public understanding of science and technology in the modern world. Additional funding is provided by AudioFile, the magazine for people who love audiobooks. Read online reviews and author profiles, listen to sound clips and new releases such as LA Theatre Works' The Rivalry, the electrifying dramatization of the Lincoln-Douglas debates starring Paul Giamatti and David Strathairn. More information is available at audiofilemagazine.com.
Explore more stories from the lives of modern-day women through LA Theatre Works' extensive audio theater catalog. Wendy Wasserstein's The Heidi Chronicles tells the story of one baby boomer's journey from 1960s confusion to 1990s self-assurance, or so she hopes.
I'm sorry I don't wear leather pants. I'm sorry I don't eat brown rice. I'm sorry I don't want to stand naked and discuss Zeus sneakers. I'm sorry I don't want you to find out that I'm worthless and superior.
Taking flight is Adriana Savant's one-woman tour de force about a friendship tested by tragedy.
Rhonda's not going to die anymore. But I've got so many pieces that I don't know how to pick them all back up.
Wild America by Erica Schickel is a hilarious Darwinist romp through mating, marriage, and monogamy.
Do you, honey bunny, swear from this day forth to subvert any attraction that you may have for other men other than myself?
I do.
These titles are available at our website, latw.org. This is LA Theatre Works. I'm joined now by Brenda Maddox, the world's foremost biographer of Rosalind Franklin. Miss Maddox has written acclaimed biographies of William Butler Yeats, Nora Joyce, and D.H. Lawrence, for which she was awarded the prestigious Whitbread Biography Prize. She has written for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Times of London, and the Observer, among others, and regularly contributes to BBC Radio 4. Brenda Maddox, welcome to LA Theatre Works, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Most people who know of Rosalind Franklin have a particular image of her in mind. Could you describe the stereotypical Rosalind Franklin?
Well, what they know of Rosalind Franklin comes largely from James Watson's book, The Double Helix, in which he described her as a kind of bad-tempered blue stocking who wouldn't let other people see her work. His portrait of her has been much criticized, but my answer to that is that if it hadn't been for Jim Watson, nobody would have heard of Rosalind Franklin.
As her biographer, do you agree with his assessment and his description of her?
Yes, I think she did annoy a lot of people, and she did have a fierce temper. What I don't agree with is the kind of feminist myth of her as the wronged heroine. She was a very good scientist, and she didn't like the lab she was working at, and she wanted to get out as soon as possible. So it was as much her fault as anybody else's that she wasn't there to profit from the great discovery that Maurice Wilkins, Francis Crick, and James Watson made with the result of her X-ray photographs. She was so unhappy at King's College London that she moved to a much less prestigious college within London, Birkbeck College. So her work, which she had left behind, was shown to Watson and Crick, and they went on to one of the greatest scientific discoveries of all time. But that's why she wasn't there.
Describe for us Rosalind Franklin's early life. What sort of a life did she and her family have as Jews living in England?
She was a type which is probably not too well understood in America, but very affluent upper-class Jews who had come to England in the 18th century. They were very well established as bankers, and they tend to marry each other. It was called the cousinhood. She didn't marry anybody, but not because they were Jewish, but just because she was just so interested in her own work. But they lived in Kensington, North Kensington, in a very good part of London, and she went to St. Paul's Girls' School and then to university. She was just very good at everything she did.
Was Rosalind encouraged in her mathematical interests as a child?
Her family respected her intellect. They just let her get on with it. I think they didn't push her in any way. I mean, she had a very good early education, and she was very good at it. And there was none of this sense one thinks to think that people held girls back in the past. Her family certainly had absolutely none of that. She belonged to a family which respected women's achievement.
Rosalind went to Cambridge in 1938. Was this decision supported by her family?
Oh, yes. They certainly wanted her to get on. They were kind of a family that wanted the best of everything for their children, and you couldn't get better than Cambridge.
How would you characterize her years at Cambridge?
I think she was very, very happy there. She did love science, and she loved getting on with her work, and she, as far as I know, had no social problems. She learned a lot, and she profited from it completely.
Rosalind relocated to France several years after graduating from Cambridge. What brought her there, and what sort of work was she doing?
She had a good job in a lab, and she hadn't been able to find a job in London that would actually allow her to do the kind of research she wanted to do. So she was working very happily in Paris, but her letters make clear all the time that she wanted to come back to London. She was looking for jobs at the Royal Institution, at King's College, at Birkbeck College, and when she finally got an appointment at King's College, she immediately came home.
Was Rosalind brought to King's to work specifically on DNA?
No, J.T. Randall, who brought her down, he said he wanted her to work on certain acids in which we are interested. He knew from her French work that she was very good at X-ray photography. And it just so happened, before she got to King's, he got some wonderful samples called Signer DNA, which was very, very good for photographic purposes. So when she got there, suddenly he gave her the material, and it was just perfect for the work she knew very well how to do.
Did Rosalind have any sense that her work, after she left King's, was being co-opted by Watson, Crick, and Wilkins?
No, she didn't. To her, she was working on something different called RNA, and those were exciting initials as DNA. And she died of cancer, unfortunately, sadly, in 1958, before Watson, Crick, and Wilkins got the Nobel Prize for the discovery of the double helix of DNA. But she didn't have a sense that, oh, they've stolen it from me. She was more interested in what she was doing next.
So, how close was Rosalind to uncovering the true model of DNA on her own, even though she may not have realized at the time the importance of what she was doing?
Probably, it has been said, a couple of months away. If she'd persisted at it, she would have seen it. But also in science, you have to share knowledge with other people, and she was too much of a loner. I think that really held her back. But if she had, if science is full of ifs, if she had stayed at King's and she had realized, and she had talked to Watson, who's coming down from Cambridge, interested himself in trying to figure out how DNA replicated, she might have got it, but it's just what might have been.
So in a way, her own limitations, her inability to truly communicate with people, is what negatively impacted, the best outcome of this research and all this work she'd done. I mean, in a way, she sort of threw it away without knowing it.
She did, without knowing it, but remember, this was 1951. And it wasn't like the North Pole or something, people striving out for a known target. They didn't know quite what they were looking for, and they were just fumbling around. And she was a wonderful scientist at a time when there weren't many women scientists. But she wasn't striving for a goal, and certainly not for a Nobel Prize.
How was Rosalind memorialized at the time? Was there any controversy over her legacy in the immediate aftermath of her death?
Nobody had thought of her until James Watson's book. And Watson's book came out in 1968. And of course, by then, feminism had got underway, and people started to say, where are the women scientists? Why is their work not being recognized? But she just died almost too early before people began to expect that women even did science.
Did any of her former collaborators come forward to set the record straight, as it were, about her true contributions?
Well, I think after Watson's book came out in 1968, she died in 1958. And as her family said, I'm glad she never lived to see the book, because she probably wouldn't have written so frankly. And yes, Don Casper has, and even Maurice Wilkins, various people have acknowledged, and of course the feminists have taken up the cause and really tried to restore her or reinvigorate her reputation.
What sort of a model or influence does she serve for young women scientists working in the field today?
She's an inspiration for young women, that women can go into science, and they can, even now they're learning, go into physics. I think today's young women can't imagine what it was like all those decades ago when, women weren't taken seriously, luckily, because if they're interested in science, they will do it, and without thinking, I can't do this because I'm a woman.
Brenda Maddox, thank you for speaking with us today. This was very interesting.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Brenda Maddox, the author of Rosalind Franklin, The Dark Lady of DNA. Joining me now is Dr. Pamela Bjorkman, the Max Delbruck Professor of Biology at the California Institute of Technology and an investigator at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Dr. Bjorkman is the head of the Bjorkman Group at Caltech, where she uses X-ray crystallography and biochemistry to study immune recognition in proteins, particularly as it relates to HIV. Dr. Bjorkman was named the 2006 Laureate for Women in Science and was elected to the U.S. National Academy of Sciences in 2001. Dr. Bjorkman, welcome to LA Theatre Works, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's start with a basic question about your field. What is X-ray crystallography, and why is it important?
X-ray crystallography is an imaging technique that gives you a picture. In this case, it's being used for biomolecules. It's analogous to microscopy. So in microscopy, you use some form of radiation, for example, light or electrons, and this radiation would interact with a sample, and then it would be refocused to give you a magnified view of the sample.
So is this like a sonogram, except that it's taking pictures of things we can't even see?
There are some technical differences. A sonogram would give you directly an image, whereas because there's no lens that would refocus X-rays, you have to do mathematical computation to actually get the image out. But in a sense, it's giving you a view of something you wouldn't normally see. In a sonogram, it would be, say, the inside of your body. In X-ray crystallography, it would be a molecule that you couldn't possibly see because it is hundreds of millions times smaller than anything you could hope to see.
How important is Rosalind Franklin in the field, and why?
I think Rosalind Franklin is becoming increasingly important to the field of structural biology today, now that her story is becoming more well-known through plays such as Photograph 51 and books such as Brenda Maddox's book, The Dark Lady of DNA. So Rosalind Franklin was a woman who made truly fundamental contributions to three different fields. First, her studies of the structures of coal and graphite, which she conducted during her doctoral work and later in France. And then second, her DNA structural studies, which is what we'll be discussing today. And third, after she worked on DNA, she worked on the structures of viruses. I think it would be remarkable if she'd produced important results in only one of these fields over the course of, say, a normal scientific career. But she actually made fundamental contributions to all three of these fields before her death in 1958 when she was only 37. And she did all of this despite what I would say would be the less than hospitable atmosphere for women in science that prevailed at that time. So for me, Rosalind Franklin has always served as a role model for how a scientist can keep on working on a difficult scientific problem because they really want to know the answer, not because they want potential glory or recognition or for being first in a so-called race. And one thing that the Photograph 51 play emphasizes is that Rosalind Franklin was not interested in quote-unquote racing for the structure of DNA. She was really driven by the science, not by competitiveness or, say, the desire for recognition. And I think the best science is done when scientists really wants to know an answer because of his or her own interest and love of the subject, not because they're in a race for a prize.
Could Watson and Crick have made their discoveries about DNA without Rosalind's groundwork?
I think there's really no question that Watson and Crick relied on Rosalind Franklin's data to formulate their model for the structure of DNA. So not only did her data prove that DNA was helical, it gave Watson and Crick the distances and other parameters they needed to start the model building that they did. So the play highlights the importance of the photograph 51, which is this famous picture that shows the X structure. So it highlights the importance of that image for Watson and Crick's discovery. And that's, of course, accurate, but Watson and Crick also had access to a report that Rosalind Franklin had written for a biophysics committee visit to King's College, and that report included summaries and some of these critical parameters of her results. And without these data, not just the photograph, but also this report, there would have been no basis by which Watson and Crick could have built a model. So you might ask the question, could someone other than Rosalind Franklin have recorded the necessary data to deduce a structure for DNA? So I think the answer to that is yes. And in fact, Maurice Wilkins had started X-ray diffraction studies of DNA fibers at King's College with Raymond Gosling before Rosalind Franklin arrived there. But Rosalind Franklin was really an unusually gifted experimentalist and an excellent theoretician. And the quality of the images she produced and her interpretations of them were really critical to getting the double helical model of DNA. So to answer your question simply, no. Watson and Crick could not have made their discoveries about DNA without Rosalind Franklin's data. In my view, it would have been fine to use her data for building the DNA model had she known it was being used and had she given permission for its use. And under accepted scientific codes of conduct, she would have been a co-author on the Watson and Crick paper.
Describe for us the process that Rosalind used to arrive at her X-ray images of DNA.
Well, she used fibers of DNA in which millions of strands of double helical DNA are aligned with each other, and then they create a fiber. And then the fiber is placed in the X-ray beam, and this causes X-rays to be scattered in different directions. The scattered X-rays were then recorded on photographic film, and unlike imaging of samples using a light microscope or, say, in a sonogram, there's no way to refocus the radiation to obtain an image. There's no lens that will refocus these scattered X-rays, so the scattered pattern of X-rays has to be interpreted computationally to calculate a three-dimensional structure.
Do you still use any of the techniques pioneered by Rosalind Franklin?
Well, the field certainly advanced in a great many ways, including having automated detectors that are digital that read out the intensity of the scattered X-ray beams. Most of our work is done in a more automated way than what was perhaps depicted in photograph 51 with developing films and looking at them. We have a lot more use of computers, which are a lot faster and that can do a lot more calculations. Many of the calculations that Rosalind Franklin was shown doing by hand, for example, an important calculation that she was doing on the A and B forms of DNA called a Patterson function, these are all done using computers now, not by hand. But certainly we use some of the techniques that she was using. It's the same basic experiment. You put, in this case, a crystal into an X-ray beam, and then you interpret the pattern of scattered X-rays.
How accurately does the play Photograph 51 depict the hard science?
Well, I think it's hard to portray what really goes on in a lab, in a play or a movie, because much of a scientist's typical day would involve experimental manipulations or maybe technical conversations with other scientists, and that wouldn't make for, it would be kind of boring. So it wouldn't make for good dramatic theater. But with some artistic license, I think the play does a good job in making the science interesting. And for the most part, it's accurate. Now, I had a small issue with one part of the play in which Watson and Crick come to a sudden understanding of how DNA is copied after they figure out that the structure is an anti-parallel double helix. That is, the strands of each of the helical parts run in opposite directions. But they come to this understanding before they figure out the specific pairing of the bases. That is, A pairs with T and G pairs with C. And it really is the base pairing that leads to an understanding of how one strand can serve as a template for another strand so that you can copy the genetic information. It isn't sufficient that the structure is an anti-parallel double helix. In other words, it's necessary that it's anti-parallel, but it's not sufficient. And I think this is a minor point. What may be more significant, however, is that Don Casper, who is portrayed in the play as being at King's College during the work on the structure of DNA, he didn't actually meet Rosalind Franklin until after she'd left King's. But he has made the point that Rosalind Franklin would not have exposed herself to the X-ray beam in the ways that are depicted in the play. So he doesn't believe that exposure in the lab to X-rays had anything to do with the ovarian cancer that eventually killed her.
That's very interesting, because I think a large point is made about that. I mean, you get the clear indication that that was a cause. Well, this has been very, very interesting, Dr. Bjorkman. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I've been speaking with Dr. Pamela Bjorkman, the Max Delbruck Professor of Biology at the California Institute of Technology. You can hear more of our conversation at our website. Go to latw.org. Photograph 51 starred Miriam Margolyes as Rosalind Franklin, with Matthew Arkin, Maxwell Caulfield, John Matthews, Darren Richardson, and Nick Toran. Stage manager Kenneth Houston. Live sound effects Teresa Arison. Associate producer Christina Montano. Editor Wes Dewberry. Recording and mixing engineer Mark Holden for the Invisible Studios, West Hollywood. Our director is Michael Hackett. LA Theatre Works is produced by Mike Weiskopf and Ron Lipkin. Matt Coe composed our theme music. For current updates on LA Theatre Works radio broadcasts, tour information, or casting updates for a live series, find us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter as LA Theatre Works. You can also email your comments or suggestions to radio@latw.org. I'm Susan Lowenberg, producing director of LA Theatre Works.
LA Theatre Works performs and records our productions in front of an audience, and we want to have you at our next show. If you live in LA or you're planning a trip, follow us on Facebook and Twitter and visit latw.org to find out what we're staging next. Major funding for our live performance season is provided by the Peter Glenville Foundation. Additional support for LA Theatre Works' national broadcast series is provided by the Capital Group Company's Charitable Foundation, the Department of Cultural Affairs, City of Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors through the Los Angeles County Arts Commission. This is LA Theatre Works.
This is LA Theatre Works. I'm Susan Lowenberg. I'm joined now by Brenda Maddox, the world's foremost biographer of Rosalind Franklin. Miss Maddox has written acclaimed biographies of William Butler Yeats, Nora Joyce, and D.H. Lawrence, for which she was awarded the prestigious Whitbread Biography Prize. She has written for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Times of London, and the Observer, among others, and regularly contributes to BBC Radio 4. Brenda Maddox, welcome to LA Theatre Works, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Most people who know of Rosalind Franklin have a particular image of her in mind. Could you describe the stereotypical Rosalind Franklin?
Well, what they know of Rosalind Franklin comes largely from James Watson's book, The Double Helix, in which he described her as a kind of bad-tempered blue stocking who wouldn't let other people see her work. His portrait of her has been much criticized, but my answer to that is that if it hadn't been for Jim Watson, nobody would have heard of Rosalind Franklin.
As her biographer, do you agree with his assessment and his description of her?